This is Tuesday Tips for May the 12th, 2026, here on Following Him, the Disciple Life. Tip: pray before you eat your popcorn. Now, what am I talking about? Well, I'm actually using an example from my personal life. Oftentimes at night, in the evening, when I'm sitting down to watch a program, the snack I'm going to pop some popcorn. That is a very common thing for me to eat at night. And with our evening snacks, for example, you know, when you sit down to have some popcorn or maybe some potato chips or eat a bowl of ice cream, with things like this, often we actually don't say a prayer. You know, we'll do it when we sit down for a meal, at least if we sit down for a meal with others. Now, sometimes people don't think to say a prayer when they're not sitting down with somebody else to eat a meal. But and you know, maybe we'll say a prayer before we go to sleep. But with these other things, we often don't think to say a prayer. You know, we have this admonition, this encouragement in 1 Thessalonians 5:17 to pray without ceasing. Now, that doesn't mean, as some have suggested, to go around with a prayerful attitude. No, that is a command to be constantly involved with this activity. Obviously, it doesn't mean every moment of the day, but this is to be a constant in your life. And the man that wrote it, he comes from a background where, you know, the Jewish people, they had prayers for all kinds of things, and even today, observant Jews, they do have prayers to go with all kinds of things. If you've ever seen the show The Chosen, and you'll notice, like, they're always praying on the show. Well, that's a very Jewish thing, and of course Paul was writing from that background. So the man that wrote Pray Without Ceasing, he comes from a tradition where they very much were praying without ceasing. You know, before you eat a piece of fruit, you say a quick prayer. And I would point out, it doesn't have to be a long prayer. But, you know, we have the principle in 1 Timothy 4:4 where Paul is talking against those that were forbidding people from eating certain foods, and says nothing is to be refused if it is received with thanksgiving. Now, what's that thanksgiving about? Well, it's about giving thanks. And so, you know, it is not a difficult thing to take 15 seconds and thank God for the luxury of all the extra food that we have. You know, we're not saying you have to go into this long prayer before you eat an apple, but to tell God, you know, thank you for this fruit that you provide for me. And, you know, if we feel silly doing that, that sounds like that would be an us problem. That would be an us problem. Prayer should be a very natural thing to us. Prayer is one of the disciplines of being a disciple. So before you eat your popcorn, before you eat that bowl of ice cream, before you eat the nachos that they give you, you know, the chips and salsa at the Mexican restaurant, or eat that piece of bread they bring you at whatever place you go to before they bring out the main entrees, go ahead and pray then. Just go ahead and pray then. Pray before you eat your popcorn. You have a good rest of the day, and shalom.